Hi everyone. Today we're going to be doing several things. First, I want to announce that my research on Karl Jobst and fascism in the gaming community is complete insofar as the first full edition of the document is out and available on my website. So I wanted to talk about that, but I also wanted to talk about it in relation to various things that I included based on current research that went into the document. That includes Karl Jobst's final lawsuit update versus Billy Mitchell. But before we do all of that, I wanted to talk a little bit about myself and then go over the changes in the first edition of Hot Karl Jobst Still Racist and Fash in 2025. First, my name's Persephone Waard. I have my MA in Gothic English Literature and independent PhD in Gothic Poetics and Little Gothic BDSM, focusing partially on Metroidvania, and I am the author of the multi-volume nonprofit book series Sex Positivity. Its art director, sole invigilator, illustrator, and primary editor, the other co-editor being Bay Ryan. I'm a male-to-female trans woman, Tolkien and Amazon enthusiast, anti-fascist, atheist, and Satanist, polypan kingster, erotic artist, pornographer, and anarcho-communist. You can financially support my blog through Ko-fi or Patreon. One is safe for work and the other not safe for work, but the money for either goes towards the same art and essays I produce, which often complement each other. Persephone from the future here. Before we get started, I was considering watching Karl Jobst's 2-hour-long video and going over it piece by piece, but I already summarize it in my document, and I don't really feel like it because, again, the whole point of a good summary is you should be able to get the gist. That gist is basically that Karl Jobst is a liar, proven in court, and is continuing to lie in ways that basically try and deflect from the fact that he defrauded his audience, that he lied to them in the GoFundMe in such a way as to get money to pay for the one and only lawsuit that was being filed against him, that was actively filed against him. And depending on where you look, the information is slightly different, but he misled his audience, and that's demonstrable enough, in my opinion, but also in other people's opinions. So basically, what I'm saying is that I don't feel like reading that. If you want to, I'll link it in the description below, but we'll just be going over my summary of it when we go over the changes in version 1.0 of Hot Karl Jobst Still Racist and Fash in 2025. Before we start, I also want to say that this video is effectively a script, meaning I'll be reading this document, which serves as a script, and I'll largely be staying on script, and I've practiced reading this multiple times throughout various editions, but at times I will be going off script, and also I will invariably make some mistake or another. The mistakes will be small, but I will not be reading this perfectly just because generally when reading things aloud, I do tend to make small mistakes. I don't have an editor to edit all of that out. I just have myself, and I expect you to be able to follow along regardless if I make a tiny mistake or not. With that out of the way, I first want to go over the changes that I made to version 1.0 of Hot Karl. Specifically, those changes were inspired by Karl Jobst's final lawsuit update, which was published 10 days ago on August 11th, as well as these two videos by LUS and other videos as well that I'll mention. Now, I've already gone over this document in its entirety. The changes are located primarily at the start of the document, so I wanted to read those to you because the entire front of this document, as it's featured here on my blog, is different. We'll do that, and then we'll go over Karl Jobst's video and LUS's videos as well. Hot Karl Jobst Still Racist and Fash in 2025, May 3rd, 2025. This page is dedicated to Persephone Waard's research on Karl Jobst, specifically her research document, Hot Karl Jobst Still Racist and Fash in 2025, or A Study of Fascism in the Gaming Community. It investigates Karl himself, but also other members of said community who claim to investigate Karl's antics. We'll be doing it here, warts and all. Note, this work ties to Persephone's Sex Positivity book series and her 2025 Metroidvania corpus. Artist left, Persephone Waard. Right, from left to right, top to bottom. Billy Mitchell, LUS, R White Goose, Gen X, Smash JT, Potion Sword Run, Razor Fist, Apollo Legends, and Karl Jobst. Regarding not safe for work content, this version is safe for work. Apart from several images, however, both it and my not safe for work website version are completely identical. i.e., the latter's contents are mostly safe for work, meaning no explicit nudity except for Bay Ryan's naked body at the end, and the backstabber image Gen X showed his audience on YouTube. The not safe for work version also includes the image of a bleeding child and various uncensored slurs that Karl allegedly uses. Not enough said not safe for work material is on this page. Regarding polish and PDF formatting, as of version 1.0, how Karl is technically finished, but the PDF formatting is still a bit jank. This will be updated with future versions. Current version 1.0, whose PDF you can download on my 18 and up website. Here we have the image of the cover of the PDF file in particular, as well as the footnotes on the left side. For the visually impaired, I also read the safe for work version aloud on my YouTube channel. Content warning: racism, sexism, sexual assault, statutory rape, transphobia, aporophobia, whorephobia, ableism, libel bullying, and fascism. Table of contents, changelog, new preface, original opening, disclaimers, all of them, original summary, more shade, following up Karl's lies after he and Billy duke it out in public, and the rest of the document is what it was before version 1.0. So this section here has all been changed with the release of version 1.0. This section here is the same as it was before I released version 1.0. What we'll be doing is we'll be going over the new preface, the original opening, part of the disclaimers, just because there's a lot of them, the original summary, and specifically more shade following up with Karl's lies after he and Billy duke it out in public. This section in particular was written in response to Karl Jobst's video, My Final Lawsuit Update. Here we have the changelog. I'm not going to read it, but if you want to look at it yourself, just pause the video here and read through the new preface. With this piece nearing completion, I have chosen to cap it off with a short preface. While called Hot Karl, this body of research explores the racism and fascism inherent to the broader gaming community that Karl belongs to. It began after writing Those Who Walk Away from Speedrunning, a trans woman's experiences researching and abuse suffered from the speedrunning community. Or more accurately, several months after writing that piece, i.e. when Karl Jobst lost in Australian court versus Billy Mitchell on April 1st, 2025. About a month after the trial, I released Karl Jobst Still Racist on my old blogging website on May 3rd, changing the title to Hot Karl on June 25th after a cancelled interview inspired me to. Initially, I focused on Karl's racism and how no one in the gaming community wanted to discuss it, and Karl's Nazi ties, i.e. despite these same people calling Karl out for his sexism and grifter behavior, they were oddly quiet about something that had been common knowledge for years. The more I looked, the more I found, the project expanding rapidly over the course of several months. So what started as a relatively short compendium, one tying my older work on Karl to a very public black eye, turned quite quickly into a larger project. As always, my work gives an anisotropic perspective, i.e. meaning changes through whatever direction information flows, and we really shouldn't rely on the culprits to investigate themselves. Written from a trans woman anti-fascist investigating fascism, my aegis reflects the terrible qualities of those claiming to investigate Karl back on themselves, i.e., not everyone's equally bad here, but no one's clean in this situation either. Instead, they all kind of suck, having dug their own graves, so stare and tremble, nerds. Original opening. In 2021, Karl Jobst was exposed on Reddit for having ties to fascist speedrunner R. White Goose, who was publicly banned in 2018 by GDQ for his openly Nazi views. Karl not only never apologized for this, he's still racist and fash in 2025, meaning in ways that others, including various racial minorities, won't investigate. I want to document that collective issue among the wider gaming community, i.e., despite my gender expression and trans emasculation, trading male privilege for male alienation, I still have relative white privilege in regards to racial privilege, so I'll blow the whistle on Karl, not to cancel him as he states, but document his racism and fascist ties for research purposes. Also, not even R. White Goose was cancelled because his own channel is still up. We'll also examine various people orbiting Karl, his friends, but also his frenemies and victims, e.g. Smash JT, Gen X, and LUS, and Billy Mitchell and Apollo Legend, respectively. They all kind of suck. Also, just to clarify, when I say that Apollo Legend sucks, they were someone who was defaming Billy Mitchell and lost in court, similar to Karl Jobst. So, in terms of them being completely innocent in this situation, they absolutely were not. That doesn't mean I condone what happened to them. You should never bully people, especially bullying them to the point of suicide. But at the end of the day, Apollo Legend did have a hand in being essentially a pest themselves. And that's what I'm referring to with this statement. Disclaimers. Given how this research project effectively muckrakes people who are especially litigious, untrustworthy, and mean-spirited, Still Fascist requires, in my opinion, multiple disclaimers. We'll be reading part of one of them. If you want to read the entirety, I'll scroll through the whole thing, but I will only read the opening. First, all opinions are my own, i.e. as part of my research conducted alongside my book series, Gothic Communism. The material within is written, speaks about public figures, and popular media for purposes of education, satire, transformation, and critique, hence falls under fair use regarding copyright and free speech regarding defamation, i.e. defamation, be it slander or libel, spoken or written, requires a statement, specifically a statement of fact, to be false, and defamation of a public figure requires false statements thereof to have been made with actual malice or knowing they were false when making them. That's the opening, and here's the rest of it. You can pause and read it yourself, or just go to the webpage. That was the entire disclaimer plus the footnote attached to it. Now we arrive at the original summary. To summarize, Karl was exposed in a court of law on April 1st, 2025 for, among other things, lying to defraud his audience. To it, I've looked more into his racism and other bigotries, i.e. by investigating him, but also anyone, token or not, who defends him. There's a lot of findings, persons to keep track of, e.g. for the original video I made, Karl Jobst is racist in 2025 plus full evidence, and token racist who defends Karl Jobst is sexist and queerphobic too, which I've compiled into this larger compendium. Said compendium summarizes my research and findings, but also various works by other people, i.e. those who have also investigated Karl and his friends, the entirety of our combined materials going back years, to at least 2018, but frankly further back than that, if you also consider Karl's pickup artistry from the mid-2010s and GoldenEye speedrunning days from the early aughts. In regards who, being exposed in a court of law for lying to defraud his audience, I'll clarify what I mean by this in the following addendum. And the one that features the most transformative aspect of version 1.0 because it didn't exist in the older versions of this document, is more shade following up with Karl's lies after he and Billy duke it out in public. This specifically refers to my final lawsuit update by Karl. Update 8/20/2025. With the dust up of court having effectively settled, both Karl and Billy have come forward and issued "I'm right, fuck you" statements to the other guy. I've already commented on Billy's end, while Karl's, as of writing this, is barely over a week old. It's also 2 hours long, throws shade at LUS, and even sees Karl eating crow while fessing up to defaming Billy. Except Karl lies when telling the truth, and generally while being a massive dick. Not that Billy doesn't get his licks in below. I'd like to follow up my initial writings by unpacking that a little, and to remind people that my focus remains on Karl's racist, fascist approach towards communication, i.e. to lie and tell the truth as he desires, while fencing with his sworn enemy and throwing those around him under the bus to get even. The fact remains Karl cares about victory at all costs, including lying to those close to him or at least in his orbit. Unpacking this behavior through further flexibility and nuance isn't required to understand Karl's racism/fascism, but does connect to either in ways I hope you'll find useful, i.e. when reading the whole document, a dissection of Karl's mendacious behavior after he's shown his hand, acclimating you to such stratagems where and how they actually occur. Please bear in mind, despite me wanting to be fair and precise, flexible in my opinions, and even finding elements of Karl's latest video oddly persuasive, meaning in ways where I felt elements of my opinion change, mainly that Billy's a dick for reasons beyond his slap lawsuits above, Karl's still a liar who legally defamed someone and demonstrably defrauded his audience to do so. Karl's status as liar remains complicated by how the lies tie to events of case law and public opinion, i.e. regarding things not settled in court. The connecting thread is, you guessed it, Karl's irresponsible tendency to lie, but also pick fights and use those around him to fight his battles for him. The pot calling the kettle black. Just a moment ago, for example, I wrote how the court exposed Karl as lying to defraud his audience. In truth, the case itself was about spoken defamation, not monetary fraud, but the two are connected. i.e. Karl lied to his audience while defaming Billy, but was only penalized for his defamatory actions despite the ruling being informed by things Karl lied about, meaning those that both directly tie to the case or concern events beyond the judge's ruling. What I mean by this is, Karl was found liable for defaming Billy Mitchell, who was awarded damages by the judge that Karl would be expected to pay. This means that Karl defamed Billy Mitchell as a matter of case law, which extends into public opinion after the case is spent. In legal terms, though, the case's conclusion remains true, i.e. in ways Karl can either reconcile with, lie about, or both. This truth, in turn, pertains to Karl as matter of fact being a liar in the eyes of the judge, i.e. he defamed Billy Mitchell. Quote, Mr. Mitchell alleges that the offending words carried 5 defamatory imputations. A. Mr. Mitchell had required Apollo Legend pay him a large amount of money to settle Mr. Mitchell's defamation claim against him, which caused Apollo Legend to go into considerable debt and to take on extra work to survive. B. A major contributing factor in Apollo Legend's decision to take his own life was Mr. Mitchell's requirement that Apollo Legend pay him a large sum of money to settle the defamation claim. C. Mr. Mitchell had hounded Apollo Legend to death. D. Mr. Mitchell was the main cause, or alternatively a cause, of Apollo Legend taking his own life. And E. Mr. Mitchell's conduct was a contributing factor in Apollo Legend taking his own life. I find that the first imputation was defamatory of Mr. Mitchell. Similarly, I consider that a reasonable viewer would think less of Mr. Mitchell if he had substantially contributed to another person's decision to commit suicide, whether that contribution was the sole reason or one of several reasons for the suicide and whether it was deliberate or not. This applies to each of the second, fourth, and fifth imputations. Each of them was defamatory of Mr. Mitchell. Unquote. Source: Mitchell vs. Jobst, 2025. There's also a part that I left out that speaks to the third part of the imputations as well, and the judge also, incidentally, rules that that was defamatory too. All 5 of these were found to be defamatory by Karl Jobst of Billy Mitchell. Also, this is from the court transcript, which you can find and read for yourself, queenslandjudgments.com.au, case law. So this is copied and pasted directly from the legal proceedings themselves. This is a matter of public record. So when I say exposed in a court of law for lying to defraud his audience, I'm not saying Karl was sued over the GoFundMe, which resulted from needing to pay for the lawsuit to begin with, i.e. even though Karl lied, doing so in ways that connect the GoFundMe to the case punishing him for something else. Rather, I'm specifically referring to the legal fact that Karl borrowed money from his audience for multiple lawsuits, only one of which actually existed, and also for which he lost in court, which Karl himself admits to in his latest video. i.e. regarding a Paul legend, someone Karl lied about concerning Billy Mitchell's involvement to get money out of said audience, re. for the defamation case he ultimately lost. Ergo, it doesn't matter how evil Karl thinks Billy is, or even if Billy is evil, i.e. a litigious dickhead who sues other people devil may care, because the grounds for which Karl borrowed the money for his own defense were defamatory and, furthermore, to be found misleading after he lost in court. And what I mean by that is the context, the case for which he was borrowing money for was defamatory. In short, both Karl and Billy can be liars, and Billy's lies don't change how Karl is both a liar and a fraud, i.e. one trying to redeem himself when throwing shade Billy's way. To that, the lies continue into the present, leading people to feel misled because the case ended as certain information came to light, which we'll get to. This partly owes to said grounds being attached to the very lawsuit Karl lost, albeit for different reasons, and for which he was asking money from his audience in regards to, but also he lied on his own GoFundMe page. The situation is already crazy, but has since gotten much worse as Billy Mitchell has sent me another defamation lawsuit for another $450,000. This is a lie. Karl never actually received another lawsuit. He received an intent to sue, but not actually, hey, this is an official lawsuit. They did everything but send it. It was a threat, sure, but this is still a lie. This is still something that's untrue. The lie here is one of omission, admitting, I think Billy Mitchell is going to sue me, or something akin to that, versus a statement amounting to, I have received another lawsuit, and possibly even more. At best, this is badly written to have the effect of confusing Karl's readers, at worst being some kind of lie. I never made claims without ample evidence, Karl says in 2022. Yet this is exactly what the judge found Karl to have done in 2025, i.e. when Karl treated an anonymous Reddit post like evidence. Quote, that a Apollo legend had been obliged to pay a large sum of money to Mr. Mitchell, namely a comment on Reddit to the effect that Mr. Mitchell had made Apollo legend pay him $50,000, unquote. Source, Mitchell v. Jobst. It bears repeating that Karl's entire case, the one that he lost in court, was based on hearsay he framed as evidence, only to repeatedly lie about it later outside of court, to salvage his reputation by jousting with Billy the way he did, and vice versa. The two really are made for each other. More to the point, Karl's lying leads him to present things in such a way as to omit relevant facts, re. Quote, while most of Mr. Jobst' evidence was truthful, I conclude that he is unreasonably and at times untruthfully defensive of the positions he has taken and of his own reputation, as he sees it, to the extent that, both in his videos and in his evidence, he is prepared to lie, omit the truth, and to ignore some of the relevant facts, unquote. This is coming from the judge, again from Mitchell v. Jobst. This includes Karl presenting his GoFundMe in such a way as to be part true, part untrue, i.e. not a complete lie, but also not completely true. re. most of Mr. Jobst' evidence, except the parts that weren't. On his GoFundMe page, for example, he writes, Billy Mitchell has sent me another defamation lawsuit, without saying what that lawsuit was about. On the page itself, while saying elsewhere, this GoFundMe is set to cover the rest of my existing lawsuit, plus the new lawsuit Billy says he will be filing. While this second statement is technically true, that information is again missing from the page itself, as are the details of what the second lawsuit is actually about. Nowhere in video or damnation is that said, effectively making people think the lawsuit was about something else. E.g., no mention of Apollo legend here, says one YouTube commenter below. This sentiment is mirrored by very is mirrored in many other people, so much so that it has been discussed many times over, e.g. LUS's Did Karl Jobst GoFundMe versus Billy Mitchell mislead fans into donating? And Karl, having some reasonable doubt, can just have waived a lot of them, i.e. while acting besieged versus the very man he tried to defame by throwing aspersions at to begin with. Lying is lying. Not to mention, Karl lost the case, meaning he defamed Billy and lied to his audience, to a matter of degree, also helping wage his war against the man he defamed. So when Karl mentions the GoFundMe while responding to Billy's post-trial response, he focused on how evil Billy is, not that Karl lied, and while Karl doesn't own up to having defamed Billy Mitchell in said video, this came after years of refusing to pre-trial, and months after the trial concluded, and he had time to finish his bankruptcy proceedings. But even then, he pats his audience on the back for having donated to a dishonest cause without calling it that, i.e. to help him defeat Billy Mitchell by costing him a lot of money from the lawsuit, one where Karl legally can't pay Billy back. In short, Karl admits that he lied to his audience about the second lawsuit Billy never filed, using the money to have his revenge against someone he thinks is evil. Karl abused his audience's trust by lying to them, all to garner donations to a case he ultimately lost, i.e. he never cared about winning in court, but by sticking it to Billy at other people's expense. He eroded said trust by lying to people in a variety of ways, mixing truth with lies, congratulating those he conned by making them sound like heroes for his cause, but also by lies of omission and Darva arguments. Cons are often done with the commons back to the wall. Karl's lies to fans meant to fleece them, cover up, abuse Apollo Legend's memory, which we'll get to, and justify his attacks against others while bullying them with false flags and reactive abuse. Speaking of, when Karl sticks it to LUS in the same video, he doesn't even mention the racism allegations that LUS made. He omits them entirely. To that, LUS had previously asked Karl to confirm or deny them, which we'll get to, but Karl doesn't say a word. And for a video where he supposedly lays all his cards on the table, I find it rather telling how he shuts up about that card. Instead, he continues being racist towards LUS while saying, "You attacked my wife/family in a very staunchy way," except LUS says that Karl sent a member of his own Discord after LUS's family to attack them. Also, this isn't in reference to that exactly, but this is something that is being alluded to by not just LUS, but other people who are talking about Karl and LUS. I believe this is on Kiwi Farms. Also, regarding their own comments on Karl's wife, LUS admits they were trying to discuss things, one Chinese immigrant to another, yet Karl was effectively intimidating LUS, i.e. by insinuating that LUS isn't a real lawyer and treating them like anything goes, because Karl's the real family man protecting his legacy and his property from the evil foreign fraudster while misgendering them to boot. In essence, you have someone relatively wealthy, and Karl's puffing out his chest, calling them a liar, and pulling the Darvo card while picking a fight. So again, specifically this quote here. Never mind that Karl lied in court about being an investigative journalist. He'll do anything to discredit his opponents, including former fans who have critiqued him, but also strangers. Perhaps he'll say that accounting on YouTube isn't a real accountant. Sound familiar? Karl is a liar who dug his own grave, and now he's trying to crawl out of it by using the same methods that got him there. Lying is part and parcel to Karl's daily grift, so much so that he goes mask on, mask off as needed, i.e. he can switch between retreat and revenge at the drop of a hat. First, for example, he was really confident that he'd win, but now if you ask him years later and after he went bankrupt, he was actually really scared the whole time. Ergo, his fans should be thanking him for exposing such a terrible person as Billy, with their money, of course. Well, which is it, Karl? Were you brave or scared? No matter how bad Billy is, you're the one who grifted on Apollo's legacy and tragic suicide to make a name for yourself, and lost in court over it. If you ask me, that far outweighs Billy's slap lawsuits for cheating in video games. Those suck, to be sure, but what you did is infinitely worse, i.e. the court found Billy not liable for what you defamed him for, so now you're trying to salvage your career by doubling down on old talking points, accusing others, using your words and court documents as evidence of defaming you. Pot, meet, kettle. except you're the one who lost in court. I'd call you a snake, but that's not really fair to snakes. In my opinion, you're a fascist conman ipso facto, racist, sexist, greedy, dishonest, preying on those around you while acting in bad faith. And so Karl's lies continue. To see them in relation to his fascist associates in the gaming community who also lie, friend or foe, read on, dear reader, read on. So yeah, that's my video on Karl Jobst. This effectively concludes my research of Karl. Obviously, if there's a major development, I will speak on that as well. But basically, before, during, and after the lawsuit, Karl and Billy remain enemies, and Karl is worse than Billy Mitchell, in my opinion, based on what he lied about. They both kind of suck, but I've already explained why I think one of them sucks more than the other. That's my opinion, according to the research that I've given. But if your opinion is different, okay, whatever. The fact remains, Karl Jobst is a crypto-fascist, whereas Billy Mitchell might be a con man, he might be a great many things, but as far as I can tell, he's not openly racist the way that Karl is. Obviously, fascism is an imperfect modular formula, and there are different aspects to fascism. Some of those may or may not apply to Karl Jobst. For that, I'll leave a link in the description, Umberto Eco's 14 points, which you can check out and see all the different ideas of fascism that I'm considering when calling Karl Jobst, in my opinion, fascist. All that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, stay tuned for whatever I decide to talk about next. And until then, if you want to support what I do, like, share, and subscribe, or leave a comment. I generally appreciate feedback as long as it's constructive. All that being said, once more, thank you for watching, and until next time, stay safe out there.